Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muliwanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so very honored that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Amazon Music, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, wherever you find your podcasts. Our guest today is Grace Estle. She is joining us from Southwest Florida to celebrate her debut picture book. It's called Chandler The Crocodile. Before we invite Grace into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Lily Bell, a damsel not in distress, written by Joanna Pastro. At the School for Damsels, Lily Bell enjoys many damsel-in-training classes like cake baking and vocal training, but the rule that a damsel must be in distress, she doesn't like that so much. When she's captured by one villain after another, Lily Bell uses her charm and her wit to save herself and prove once again and for everyone around that damsels do not have to be in distress, and she does it all in time for tea. Lily Bell, a damsel not in distress, written by Joanna Pastro, is an empowering fairy tale about standing up for yourself in a smart and kind way. Read it today, a great holiday gift and a great addition to any family library. Lily Bell, a damsel not in distress, by Joanna Pastro. Join us right now from Southwest Florida. Our guest is here today to celebrate the release of her debut picture book. It's called Chandler The Crocodile. Please welcome to the show, Grace Estle. Hey, Grace, how are you?
Hi, Jed. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm wonderful. I'm really happy to have you on to talk about Chandler the Crocodile. Tell us all about this book, please.
Chandler the Crocodile is about a little crocodile named Chandler who moves to the forest that is full of bears. And on his first day of school, he quickly recognizes that none of his classmates look like him. They have fluffy coats, they have blueberry eyes, and he is a reptile with dark brown eyes and leathery skin. So as he tries to fit in and make a friend, he struggles. The bears are afraid of him because he looks so different. So his first day when he goes home, he talks to his mom, who gives him this great advice about your differences are what make you special and you should embrace that and you can make a friend. So he takes that literally and he tries to show off his talents, and spoiler alert, it doesn't go well for him. So this story is really the journey of him embracing who he is, finding his authentic self. And by the end of the story, he not only makes a friend, but he learns to love himself and love his differences in the process.
That's beautiful. You know, when you said spoiler alert, I thought you were going to tell us that Chandler tried to actually embrace his classmates and terrified them, or, you know.
Maybe Grace, the author, would have written something like that, but Chandler's too kind-hearted to do that.
Yeah, and we were chatting, Grace and I were chatting a little bit before we started recording. Crocodiles, alligators, caimans, they're these fascinating, dangerous, wild creatures that actually live today. It's hard to believe that an alligator, crocodile are living and walking in the world with us right now. It seems like they are a more properly, fitted the prehistoric times.
It is amazing that these majestic beasts continue to live and thrive in our world. And I really wanted to choose a crocodile because I'm so fascinated by them. It's not just the way they look, it's not just the fact that they can be large and look effortless in the water. There's something amazing about some of the talents that they have that we don't even realize. Like, for example, they don't sweat. They are incapable of sweating. So um, that in itself is something special. And while some people may look at them and be afraid of them, there are things that make them extraordinary as well.
Tell us some of those things, please.
Well, in addition to not sweating, they actually can crawl, which is something a lot of people don't think about. They think about them in the water, maybe walking outside of water, but they can run extremely fast. Watching one of them in action is almost like watching a race car. It's unbelievable what they can do on land with those little legs and feet that they have. And they actually can go almost a year without eating as well.
Wow.
So there's some incredible survival tactics that they have, and that is most likely the reason why they're still with us today.
Yeah, yeah. You're mentioning how fast they can move, and I actually saw that at a place in Florida, and I think at the time they said that they can hit speeds of like 30 miles an hour, something
Yeah.
crazy like that.
For sure. For
Yeah.
sure. I wish I could hit that type of speed, but again, that is just part of why they're so amazing.
Yeah. When did you first become fascinated with crocodiles?
Probably my whole life, to
Really?
be honest, because I've always been enamored with the creatures that others do not find beautiful. And alligators and crocodiles certainly fall into that category. I look at tarantulas and I think about how majestic they are as well. And a lot of people are extremely afraid of them. But I think that there's something very special about their hairy bodies and how they walk around and how they can really rule a room, because humans can be so afraid of them, and think about our size compared to theirs.
Yeah. Yeah. We talk a lot about what families can talk about as they experience an author's books, and certainly the lessons of self love and accepting others. Those are very important lessons. But I love the fact that in talking to with your kids about Chandler the Crocodile, we can talk about these animals and talk about the differences between crocodiles and alligators and caimans. And there is a difference. Are you able to explain to us what those differences are?
Yes, there is a difference. And before I answer that, one of the reasons why I chose to go with animals versus humans in this story is to allow the child to apply his or her own experience to it. For example, if I had chosen an Asian American child, which I am an Asian American who's half Filipino and half Caucasian, if I had chosen that character to be the lead in the story, that might have alienated other children who are insecure about things like maybe they have a birthmark on their face, maybe they have crooked teeth. By using animals, it really allows them to tap into their imaginations and figure out how to apply the story to themselves. So, as far as the differences between alligators and crocodiles go, there are some major differences. Alligators live in the US, crocodiles tend to be overseas, but even the way that they look, crocodiles have much longer snouts and thinner snouts. Alligators, if I recall, don't hold me to this, but I think crocodiles are actually a little bit bigger than alligators. So there definitely are some physical differences. But here in the States, we don't really see crocodiles. We tend to see alligators. And that was part of the reason why I chose crocodiles too. I knew that this book would have an American audience, and I wanted to choose an animal that would be exotic.
Interesting. That's really fascinating. I can share a little story. Back, people know that I'm almost 100 years old, and what was acceptable as pets back when I was a kid, a little bit different. My dad was one of those guys who the weirder the pet, the better. And so we actually had a pair of caimans as pets in our home. A terrible, terrible idea, because if you take good care of them, they grow.
Yeah.
And one of our caimans, actually, it got to the point where we couldn't feed it without wearing fortunately, my dad was a telephone man, and so he had these big, huge leather gloves that he could grab onto electrical cables with, and we needed those to reach in and get the creature out so we could clean its cage. Otherwise, it would eat our fingers.
Oh my
And
goodness.
it
Well, it's
act
amazing that you have that knowledge of the caiman. I certainly can't provide that depth of
well,
knowledge.
it the thing that I will share is if anybody suggests you get a caiman or any kind of those exotic creatures for a pet, don't. It's not a good idea. We had to give our caiman to the zoo. It got so big.
I will second that. There are certain animals who should remain in the wild, and alligators, crocodiles, and caimans are certainly in that group. I actually saw a news story a few years ago on a man who had an alligator, and it started off as a baby alligator, and it grew to the point where he had to put the alligator in the bathtub to give it water,
Hmm.
and it was actually outgrowing the bathtub.
Hmm.
So I think that he might agree with you
Yeah.
that alligators should stay in the wild.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Hey, tell me, Grace, did you have you always dreamed about being a children's author?
Absolutely. I've been a writer since I could write, since I learned to read. I've always been telling stories and writing down stories. And I chose to write children's books because I really want to empower children and inspire them to overcome adversity and to understand that their uniqueness is what makes them special. It should be celebrated.
Yeah. What is it in your life that drives that passion?
As an Asian American, Chandler is loosely based on my experience in my elementary school as being the only Asian American.
Hmm.
All of my classmates were Caucasians. So, like Chandler, I quickly recognized that my dark hair, my dark brown eyes, my flat nose, my slanted eyes for that matter, I quickly recognized that no one else looked that way. And I yearned to look like them. But unlike Chandler, I did not embrace my gifts until my 20s.
Hmm.
So I really want children to understand early on that you are beautiful. We are all beautiful. And beauty comes in so many different forms. Just because you don't look like the person next to you doesn't mean that you aren't special. As a matter of fact, if we all look the same, how boring would this world be?
I was just going to say that. I mean, how boring is a garden where there's only one type of flower?
That's the perfect way to put it.
Yeah, yeah. What's the reaction been to from folks who've experienced Chandler?
The reaction has been incredibly positive. It's funny to hear adults react to this book because a lot of them just recognize it as a book where children learn how to be kind to themselves and others. Others have really adapted to the racial aspect. Certain ones have taken it as not just diversity, but overcoming disabilities.
Mm.
So it is really transcended into a multitude of different takeaways for adults. But the other thing that I've really enjoyed is quite a few adults have said to me, this book's not just for children, adults can enjoy it too. And that was something I wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
And when we think about your podcast and how you're encouraging families to read together, that really warms my heart because I know Chandler is something that caregivers and children can enjoy together.
Mhm. Absolutely. Did it surprise you that people picked up on and kind of related to Chandler? Um, and I've forgotten how to speak English for the moment. Um,
It's all good.
did the fact that folks are using this to kind of celebrate disabilities and the fact that we're different and folks with disabilities are beautiful as well? Did that surprise you, or did you anticipate that folks might see that?
It did surprise me. I obviously I anticipated that they may embrace the racial part of it, but when we think about diversity, it encompasses so many different characteristics. So for me as the author, I know that I've done my job well if adults can really apply it
Hmm.
to their own lives, to their own families' lives. And that in itself is a gift. And I set out with a mission of just changing one child's life. So if I've done that, then I have completed my goal as an author for sure.
Yeah. Have you taken the time, obviously people have shared their reaction with you. Have you taken a moment to think about the fact that right now there are families all over the country, possibly all over the world because of, the world that we live in, that are sitting down and reading Chandler the Crocodile together? And if you have thought about that, how does that make you feel?
What's funny about that is that I actually wrote this book in 2015 and I didn't get around to publishing it until this year. In 2015, I thought about how powerful it was, just with the condition of what the society was in 2015. And then I released it this year and I thought, man, this is timely and timeless at the same time, which is hard to do as a story. But as you mentioned, we live in this world where there are people spending a lot more time at home together. And something like this, which is entertaining, but at the same time educational, is a great way to bond as a family unit. So I certainly have thought about that. And to me, it's just a joy to be able to release this story to the world, regardless of what our situation is as a society, because I feel very strongly that it will help children.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I know you didn't write it to solve the political divisions that are tearing our country apart at the moment, but do you think that as we sit here and we think, oh, we're so polarized right now, maybe if we can help our kids love each other and love the differences that they see in each other, do you think that might be a step to helping them understand as they grow older that while people are going to look differently, have different talents, they're also going to have different opinions, and that's okay. And they're still beautiful. They might not be the opinion you have, but we can learn to talk and agree to disagree.
Absolutely. When I think about changing the world, I look to our future generations. I look to the children. I look to the generations after me, because they are the ones who are going to make the impact in our world and a long-term impact. So learning that lesson early in childhood is something that stays with you. I mean, there are numerous studies out there about how childhood events affect you as an adult, whether that's positive or negative. So this is my way of getting that lifelong lesson to a child as early as possible. This book is intended for toddlers and early readers, but there are parents who have reached out to me, new parents who are reading it to their babies and plan to continue reading it as their babies become toddlers and into kindergarten and first grade. So yes, I think that this is a method for creating positive change in our world.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned the fact that you've always been a writer and you always dreamed to be a children's writer. You wrote Chandler in 2015. You didn't get around to, you weren't able to publish it until now in 2021. Were there any books that you wrote in 2016, 2017 that you're going to be publishing in the near future?
I wish. Any writer will tell you it is a lifelong process, and you go through periods where you write every day, and then you go through periods where you can't even write a sentence. I do not have any books planned at this time. However, I do have a Chandler series. So today we're talking about Chandler the Crocodile. I've also created some school supply books. So there are notebooks that are in 8x10 size that have Chandler on the cover. I just released a dot-to-dot coloring book featuring Chandler, where young primary children can connect the dots up to 25 and color the pictures. And I'm in the process of working on a color by number book, and I'm hoping to release that within the next few weeks as well. So Chandler the Crocodile is kind of the center of all of it, but then there's these other pieces for the fans of Chandler too.
Wow. I remember doing those connect the dot pictures when I was younger. I love them. They were so much fun.
They are a ton of fun. And let me tell you, I made this book, so I had to think about how to erase the lines and where to apply the dots. And it was a lot of fun making it. But then after I was done, I got to print out each page and test it. So that was also a lot of fun. It was like reliving my childhood. But what makes my dot book special is that I also have fun facts in there on this book. Has animals in it, has fruit, has vegetables, has transportation, has dinosaurs. So I have fun facts, and then I also have fill in the blank where I'm giving the child a clue and they have to guess what that actual image is. So it's not just about having fun. Of course, that's important, but it allows them to build vocabulary, increase eye-hand coordination, and just learn some things that they didn't know. And what has been fun is a couple adults I know have looked at this book and they have said to me, I actually learned a few things myself.
Oh, it's neat, neat. You know, we always hear parents complaining, "Oh, my kid wants to read that book 5,000 times." It sounds like what you've done is created a little universe where a family can experience Chandler 5,000 times, but never in the same way.
That is the intention. I feel for every parent who has to go through that or has to hear the same song over and over again, and unfortunately knows every word to that song, whether he or she wanted to know the words to that song. But I think what makes Chandler special is just knowing that there is a major theme behind it. There is a major lesson. And I worked with an incredibly talented illustrator who's also an Asian American. And her visuals are just stunning. Seeing this book come to life, it was one thing to write this book and to tap into some of my memories and face them as an adult. But when she drew them and colored them in and sent them to me, I actually had very emotional reactions, reliving some things. And I thought, man, if I'm feeling this, others are going to feel it too. And that's great because they will walk away with an impression of the book, with a lasting impression, versus this was fun to read for a few minutes.
Well, let's give your illustrator a shout out.
Yes, so QBN Studios, they are a little illustration studio in Connecticut, and they work with a lot of self-publishers. So definitely want to give them a shout out. And I'm just so grateful for the work that they did on the book.
Awesome. Always important to acknowledge the people who help make our dreams come true.
Absolutely, especially in picture books. The words are incredibly important, but those pictures are just as important, if not more, because that is what connects. That is what brings Chandler to life. It's not my words, it's seeing Chandler go through this journey.
Yeah. Well, tell everybody, please, where they can go to find out more about Chandler the Crocodile and find out more about Grace Estle.
There are a couple places that people can go. Firstly, they can visit my website, which is graceestle.com. There's a lot of information about Chandler on the website, including the school supply series that I mentioned with notebooks and handwriting guides and the dot-to-dot book. They can also buy my book on Amazon. So if they go to Amazon and just search for Chandler the Crocodile, it's available in both paperback and hardback. And right now, the paperback is shipping in about 2 to 3 days, and the hardback is about a week. So they definitely can lock that down and have it in time for the holidays.
Excellent. Well, we've had a great time speaking about the debut picture book, Chandler the Crocodile, which was created by our guest, Grace Estle. Hey, Grace, thanks so very much for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Jed. I really enjoyed it.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Rob Harrell. He'll be here to celebrate Bat Pig, When Pigs Fly. That's the next episode of the podcast, and it's a really fun episode too. Hey, we want to invite you to connect with us on social media. Facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, and at Jedley Magic on Twitter. We love to hear from our fans. Oh, also be sure to check out our page on Pinterest. It's Reading With Your Kids. And of course, you can go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com, sign up for our free newsletter, and also please do not hesitate to use the contact button on our page to find out more about the show or to send us a message. Let us know who you'd like to hear on the show. want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to thank our guest, Grace Estle. Be sure to check out Chandler the Crocodile. Also want to thank our sponsor, Lily Bell, A Damsel Not in Distress by Joanna Pastro. I want to thank my team, Alejandra Doherty, Fatima Khan, Michael Murphy, Rory Grady. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.